Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 476 for the 3rd of December, 2017. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia, waiting for the flooding rains. Apparently there's lots of bad weather on the way. Parts of the southern part of our country, in Victoria, have been copping lots of rain. And we're on tenterhooks here in Sydney, just waiting for the sheets of rain to start rolling in and flooding us all out. I'm not sure what's going to happen. But speaking about flooding rain and lots of water, we're going to kick off this week's show with an interview with an old friend of mine, Professor Richard Wiseman. Why, you ask? Well, do we need an excuse to talk to Richard Wiseman? No, we do not. An ever-fascinating man. However, this time we sort of do have an excuse. As in the last couple of weeks, the topic of water divining has been brought up in the UK, where it's been discovered that various utility companies are still engaging the services of water diviners. It's unbelievable. And Richard was on the media in the UK to discuss this very strange thing. Always good to chat with Richard Wiseman coming up at the top of the show. Following that, it's a report from the Skeptic Zone Live, the recent Australian Skeptics National Convention Skepticon, where Mayanrd chats to Dr. Karl, Dr. Brad, some Skeptic Zone fans, and Heidi, and Mandy-Lee and Stefan from the Skeptic Zone itself, and we get reactions to our live show. And included in Maynard's report is like a little snippets from the live show to remind you what that was all about. So what do Skeptic Zone fans and other people, how did they react to our live show? And other bits. Dr. Karl talking about what to eat, for example. Then to round off the show, something a little bit different. We used to go and do a segment called the Think Tank in the early part of the Skeptic Zone for some years, and we'd always say we'd run to the club at the end of the street, which is a club not far from where I live. We ended up at the club at the end of the street the other night for a little birthday celebration for me. And Maynard was there, and Tim Mendham from the Skeptics, Tim Ferguson, and Lara Benham. My wife was there, and who else? Tim, and me. Yes, we were all there, a little celebration, and a little chance to have an informal chat for the Skeptic Zone, sort of semi-reminiscent of the old think tank days. But we do discuss some weird things, including a strange figure floating in the sky of the Northern Territory. Find out later on. Stay tuned right at the end of the show for Loose Ends, the segment where we try to tie up some of the loose ends from the show or give you some more news. And there is some more news to tell you about at the end of the show. But before we start, here's a note from Maynard and Tim Ferguson from the Bunga Bunga podcast. The next live Bunga Bunga will be on the 19th of December at the Harold Park Hotel in Glebe in Sydney. And you're all invited to come along. For more information to buy tickets, just visit Mayanrd.com.au. If you haven't been to a live recording of a podcast, it's a lot of fun. A lot of silliness goes on, which you never get to hear about when you hear the final product, because it often ends up on the cutting room floor, as they say. The last Bunga Bunga live was a lot of fun, but a big learning experience for everybody, because it was the first time. This one is the Christmas Bunga Bunga. So if you're a fan of podcasting, you're a fan of the humour of Tim Ferguson and Maynard, come along. And we'll see you on the 19th of December. But now it's time for me to run downstairs, cook up some mushrooms in the frying pan with a little bit of butter, chop up some avocado and put them all on a slice of toast. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. And joining me now on the line via the wonders of the internet, From London, it's Professor Richard Wiseman. Hello, Richard.
Hello there, how are you?
I'm very well, very good to catch up with you. I only saw you recently, of course, in Las Vegas, and it's always great to see you in person and have a brief catch-up. I meant to interview you, but time got away from us.
Well, it's lovely. It's lovely to spend some time with you now. I'm in North London. It's grey. It's overcast. It's far too early in the morning. But other than that, it's a delight. I bet you're in Australia. I bet it's sunny, isn't it? Tell me it's. Oh no, it'll be in the evening, so it won't be quite so sunny.
It's bright sunshine on the other side of the planet. Right here, it's dark, but it's warm and muggy at the moment.
Oh, okay. That makes me feel a little bit better. Right, good.
But speaking of water, and the reason I've contacted you to have a chat, and we can get on to some other things in a moment. But speaking of water everywhere, not a drop to drink unless you're a water diviner. Water divining is one of the classics of skepticism. It's certainly one of the topics that got me into skepticism when I saw James Randi do a special here in Australia way back in 1980. And it comes and goes, and we investigate it every now and then. And I think it's a great lesson for new skeptics. It's a great way to cut your teeth to investigate water divining. But it's come up again in the news in the UK. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
I'm very happy to. It didn't actually originate with me, this story, at all. There's a scientist here, Sarah LePage, and she, I think it was her mum, was having a local authority round to check out some leaky pipes or something. And she noticed that the engineers had brought out some water divining rods to try and find the leaky underground pipe. And so I think that sort of her mum was a bit surprised and Sally was a bit surprised and went out and said, is this just you or is this what everyone does? And they went, oh, no, the local water authorities do use divining rods. And so she wrote to the various water authorities in the UK, and they all wrote back pretty much saying, yes, that's right. We don't encourage our engineers to do it, but if they end up doing it, that's up to them. And our understanding is lots of them do.
Wow.
So it's kind of amazing in this day and age, despite all the tests showing that it doesn't work, nothing to it, you still have, lots of people and experts in this instance, still holding up 2 bits of bent coat hanger to find some water.
It really does surprise me. Well, I mean, if you think about it, Richard, from our point of view, you and I have both conducted water divining tests over the years. We've both put these things on video. We've explored the topic extensively. So I guess for you and I especially, it would be extra surprising. But what do you think about the population at large?
Well, it's all down to personal experience, isn't it? So if you bring out your rods and they cross and you dig down and there's the leak, then I suppose you think there's something to it. You're not really going to start thinking, we'll start digging down, in other areas, or, last week it didn't work, so I'll just make a note of that in my diary. I suppose these folks are being far more pragmatic and they believe this tool works. The next stage of the story, though, was even more bizarre because we have the Today programme on Radio 4, which is the sort of flagship news programme for the entire country.
Right. And
that's presented, one of the main presenters on there is John Humphreys, who is an incredibly well-respected, mainly political interviewer and wonderful radio host. And John is sort of national icon. And so I was asked to go on the show and talk about water divining. So I rock up for this interview. And John is normally extremely skeptical about such things and gives politicians a very hard time. And then during the interview, he reveals that he himself is a water diviner.
Oh, no.
And that on his farm in Wales, he has successfully, I think he said twice, located water underground. So he's a huge believer in it. And so the whole nation was shocked and was very upset that John wasn't a little bit more skeptical. And so there's a sort of Twitter outrage about it. And he ended up writing an article in the Daily Mail, still supporting his point of view. So, yeah, this thing kind of grew legs, as it were. And it just sort of shows that, this belief that goes back probably to the sort of 15th century or so is still with us. It's still a very, very powerful belief with some people.
Well, I'm not surprised because you and I both know the mechanism behind it being the ideomotor action. But like a classic delusion, when you're experiencing a delusion, you do not know it's a delusion. That's the very essence of it. And when the rods do move in the hands, especially to the uninitiated, what else would a logical person deduce? But there is a mystical force guiding the divining rods.
Well, actually, it was very interesting because in the interview with John, I said, "Oh, you dug down and you found your water." But what we're not hearing from are all the diviners who dug down and didn't find any water. And I said, it's a bit like a dream that comes true. It's incredibly striking for you, but you're not realizing that night there were, many thousands of others. And he stopped me in my tracks. And he said, no, that's just coincidence. He said, with dreaming, it's just coincidence. But with dowsing, with divining, it's a physical thing because those rods cross.
Yeah.
So absolutely. But I think his model, the model that many dowsers use, is that they're unconsciously picking up cues from the environment that's unconsciously transferring via idiomotor action to the rods.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting point. I'm not certain that's been tested. I don't know the literature that well. That most of the tests are double-blind tests. They're putting water in a bucket and you're trying to find that bucket versus other buckets that don't have water. I don't know whether someone's gone out and actually kind of done something in a very naturalistic way where there would be cues, like, the grass being slightly different color or something like that. So it's a kind of intriguing one. But if it has been done, I would love to know the experiments. It may well have been. I'm not an expert on the literature to that level.
I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on the literature to that level either. However, my research has been extensive, and I've never come across a test in the manner you describe. I would still be tempted, however, to invoke Occam's razor and say it's more likely to be misreporting and not remembering the misses more than cues from the landscape, but I would certainly not rule that out.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, the other what you would have, I suspect, with some things like a leaky pipe, would be a temporary cue, which would be very, very subtle. In terms of finding a well, whether, I don't know, if over the years you could look at, patches of trees and go, oh, well, they look particularly healthy, maybe there's water in that direction. I've got no idea. I don't know. But it is an interesting thought because, it's being skeptical about skeptics, which we should be, that our thought is, is there something magical going on? The other option is there something interesting going on that is more normal than paranormal? So it was an interesting thought. And it certainly was an interesting debate. It got the whole nation talking about dowsing.
Well, I'm not surprised. And I remember a stalwart of Australian skeptics, Barry Williams, who was the president for many years, actually put that in a documentary I did a long time ago. He surmised, or he guessed, that's why sometimes it would appear to work, because what we call the bushies, the old bush folk, the old guys in the bush, and they would get a feeling for the land subconsciously.
Yeah. I mean, Caroline, my partner, comes from a farming background. And so often we'll be out and she'll just say something. I think, man, how did you know that? So the other day she said, if we were out sort of walking, and she said, if we're very quiet, we may see the fox out over there. I said, how did you know there's a fox over there? And she said, didn't you see all the birds just suddenly scattered?
Yeah.
She goes, there's something in that thing. And there was a fox there. So, it could be some process like that. What was very funny about the John Humphreys interview is that when he wrote it up in the Mail, what he said was that people in his village had heard about his dowsing claims when he first found the water, and they'd actually tested him in the village hall with buckets of water, and he'd failed the test.
Right.
So unfortunately, he forgot to mention that on air. So that little bit got airbrushed out. But he was actually tested in his local village hall by, I assume, some local skeptical folks, and didn't do very well. So it's going to go on, isn't it? I mean, in the equivalent of us in 100 years' time is still going to be going, that dowsing thing. I wish somebody had just stopped talking about it.
The equivalent of us in 100 years' time. That's a very interesting point of view. And what's the latest? Is this still bubbling along, or has the news cycle sort of died out now?
I think the story's evaporated, and I'm particularly.
I got it, Richard. Thousands didn't, but I got it.
I think it's evaporated. It's all a bit of a washout. I'm just trying to think of any others now.
Look, I had to pour cold water on your claims, Rich.
Oh, I'm liking that one. I didn't think of that. This is far too early in the morning for me. That's very good. I like that. Yes. It's just a pipe dream. Hey!
come on, listeners, you can join in now.
No, it's all quieting down as these things do. Sure. But rest assured, it will be back at some point. I mean, that's the most amazing thing about these paranormal beliefs, isn't it? It's just how they keep on going. We're talking about a belief. I think it's 15th, 16th century.
Oh, my research indicates even further, millennia.
Oh, okay.
Which is
a long time.
Not surprising, because the basic action, even as you well know, even if you hold a pendulum on a bit of twine or something like that, you'll get the same sort of thing happening. So that it would be an ancient practice wouldn't surprise me.
That's right. I mean, the Victorian equivalent, which is table tipping and table moving, which is where you put your fingers very lightly on a table, lots of you around a small table, and it moves. Exactly the same mechanism. I mean, that's phenomenal. I've done that many times. And, even now, if you say to that group, no, this is ideomotor action, it really doesn't feel like it. It really feels like that table is being kicked around the room. It's phenomenal. So I understand why people would buy into this stuff. But some of these beliefs do sort of, drop out, but this one just it's the gift that keeps on giving. So, yes.
It really is.
I don't know who first came up with the idea, because it is a bit weird to hold two. Oh, I suppose it would have been a twig, wouldn't it? It'd been a Y-shaped twig that would then have twitched. Oh, so I guess that's not quite weird. I was thinking it's a bit weird to head into the countryside with two bits of bent metal. Whoever did that first time round, but I guess it's an evolution, as these things tend to.
Well,
so it's,
you would have seen, as I've seen over the years, people use all manner of devices.
Yes, that's right. As you say, the pendulum and so on. Table tipping, or the Ouija board is another example of it. I mean, and it's kind of fascinating, because it does mean that these tiny movements, just shows how powerful the unconscious is, that they can produce a consistent tiny movement, which when you amplify it is meaningful. And yet we're not aware of that at all. So I know some of that data has been used in some of the debates about free will, and whether or not we're truly in control of our movements and so on. So it's a fascinating world. That's what I say.
Oh, every time I blunder into my bed and hit my shin, I know full well I'm not in control of my movements, I tell you.
Yes.
Happens most nights. In fact, I got bruises all the time. So what else is happening? What else is happening in the world of Richard Wiseman? You were very kind. You autographed one of your books to my nephew, which I'll give him at Christmas time when I saw you in Las Vegas. How is Quirkology quirking along?
Quirkology is quirking along very well. I haven't made a video for a while, so I'm busy on another project. But we have a Quirkology sort of optical illusion set, which has been out with Marvin's Magic. And so that was so much fun, because as a kid, your first magic set is a very exciting moment. You're sort of Christmas time, and you take out the tricks and realize that it's all just done with a bent piece of metal and a funny old bit of plastic. So we worked together and created a Quirkology optical illusion set with all of my favorite optical illusions in. The feedback has been lovely. So the idea of kids opening that and sort of realizing that what they're seeing in front of their eyes is a construction and so on. So that's exciting. And then I'm working on a new book right now, which unfortunately I can't talk about because it's a secret book. But it is a very, very different type of book for me. And so I've been interviewing, all I can say is interviewing an exceptional group of people. And it's a very, very sciencey book. It's a very sciencey book. And I've been talking to an exceptional group of people. Watch this space.
Undoubtedly, it's all about water divining. In fact, the book that you autographed from my nephew was, I think it was the 10 bets you will always win.
That 101 bets.
101.
That's right. Unless your copy was very, very slim. If it was just the 10. The 101 bets. So, and that came just this notion of, a couple of things. One is that those bets, which date back to Victorian times, if not before, are all about lateral thinking. Can you, whatever it is, name 50 50 words without using the letter A? and you go, my goodness, I can't do that, and then you just count from 1 to 50, and you've solved the bet. So those are the lateral thinking, and also using everyday objects in unusual ways. So that book goes into the science of those bets as well. So yeah, it's all about sort of getting skepticism and scientific thinking out there, but hopefully in a more fun and soft and gentle way. In order that, maybe in 20, 30 years' time, we don't have people doing water divining in order to try and find an underground leak. So it's fun. I love all the bet stuff, and I love all the ecology stuff. I think it's where my sort of heart naturally lies.
Yeah, me too. The term has been floating around now for a long time. The last 4 or 5 years is Bigfoot skeptic, meaning people who at heart really are fans of the old-fashioned stuff, the water divining, ESP, spoon-bending monsters. That's why I got into it. And over the last, especially 10 years, it's certainly diverged more into things like consumer affairs, alternative medicine, anti-vaccination. But at heart, I really go back to the tried and true skepticism.
That's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think I'm with you on that. I guess, I think it's, to use the wrong analogy, it's a broad church, isn't it? I mean, we can sort of have both of them in the same room. They're not competitors in any sense. And over at QED this year in Manchester, the British Skeptics Convention, there were some wonderful talks, which were outside the mainstream of skepticism. So I think, bring it all on. It's all good, but let's not lose the kind of old stuff, as it were, the kind of bedrock of skepticism, and actually the topics that really motivated the forefathers of skepticism. Because you've got to remember, I mean, Ray Hyman was at SciComm.
Yes,
Ray was the founding fathers of modern day skepticism. So we are standing on the shoulders of giants, albeit in Ray's instance, he's quite a short giant, but I love hanging out with Ray. He's one of the few men that's actually shorter than I am, because I'm not at all. So, and Ray was great. Ray was wonderful at the convention. He really made me laugh. I said to him, "What's your greatest contribution to magic?" Because he's a magician. I said, "What's your greatest contribution to magic?" And he said, "Oh, I never performed very much." And I thought that's the right answer. Not only for that, I mean, that's just a wonderful answer. There's no ego there. It's modest, it's beautiful, and I'm a big fan of Ray.
Yes, he's a wonderful gent. He really is, and it's funny to see him and James Randi together, because they're roughly the same height.
Yes, that's right. The first to know if there's a flood, and the last to know if it's raining.
That's right.
Yes, the old gag goes. But that's great. And these are the guys that did it. They put the whole movement together.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Paul Kurtz is no longer with us. Marcello Truzzi isn't. I'm trying to think who was the fourth one on that original set with SciComm.
Was it Carl Sagan, possibly, or he was an early contributor anyway?
Certainly an early contributor. It was certainly Ray, Randy, Marcello, Paul. It might have been just those four, actually. Oh, it's really bad. If I've missed out a fifth person, they'll maybe it's Jim Alcock. I'm not certain. Anyway, those are the folks that had the vision, and we should all remember that.
Yeah, and just I'll wrap up this by saying how important it is to keep those old-fashioned things in our heads. And when we talk about water divining, it's the gift that keeps on giving to skeptics, because, as I said right at the beginning of the interview, for new skeptics, it's a wonderful thing to review, learn from, because you really learn how to do a good, well-constructed double-blind test when you talk about water divining. I still use it to this day in the Mystery Investigator show, the show we do every year for school kids. And as I've often thanked you over the years, every year we show one of your videos, perceptions, to school groups. And I think I mentioned to you at SciCon this year, this is the first time I run it twice. I used to run it once, and the kids got a giggle out of it. But now, this year, I ran it twice, so they know what to expect. And I think that added a lot to it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. No, it is great with water divining, as you say, because it's something very physical. They can experience it and then it gets debunked, and that's great. And maybe it's good these things do survive. Imagine if you said actually that ghosts don't exist and that literally was the end of that belief. Yeah. I mean, the skepticism would have died out in like 1620 or something, wouldn't it? Maybe it gives us something to do. It gives us something to do. Otherwise, we'd just be looking at one another in conventions going, well, I wish someone had believed something irrational. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, heavens. I'd have to go back for designing web pages for banks. I think I'd stick to skepticism.
Exactly. None of us want that. So, yes.
Especially the banks, I can tell. Richard Wiseman, Professor Richard Wiseman in London, thank you so much for your time for the Skeptic Zone. Now, where can people go on the internet to find out more about what you're up to?
Oh, they can go anywhere they like. RichardWiseman.com is my website, and at Richard Wiseman on Twitter. Those are the two main places where I post things. So yes, come on board, and we'll all have fun together.
We will. Richard Wiseman, once again, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
G'day, this is Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, proud to be a skeptic, and you can find out more about me at drkarl.com and get lots of free stuff there as well.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
We've just discovered that there's a green room. As we go into the green room, look at all these people here. Look at all these people standing around with Dr. Karl. Now, when Dr. Karl gets to the snack bar, what are you heading for there? A bit of eggplant, Dr. Karl.
Eggplant? I follow the rule in dietary matters of eat plants. Eat food, mostly plants, not too much. Mm-hmm. And so I've got some capsicum, which is possibly one of the richest sources of vitamin C that you can have. Eggplant, because...
Also a crowd dispersant.
Oh yeah, if you get the
get the active alkaloid, is it, and then fire it at people?
I don't know if it's an alkaloid, but I think it's capsaicin. Look, it could be. I think it's capsaicin, which is the active stuff. And then I've got some eggplant and some mushrooms, which I love. And that's a good stuff.
Now we've got some dairy over here, the cheese. Now, how should one approach that? A little bit or not?
Oh, I love dairy. And I'm going to go for cheese because that's God's way of being friendly. So I like the blue cheese. It's nicely stinky as well.
Here we go. See, this is so even Karl approaches his diet skeptically, which is great, Karl.
Oh, look, I'm just following the old rule, which works, which is something that's been in our culture for thousands of years, but it would vary from culture to culture. So if you're, say, Mediterranean or Chinese, what is the best food for you could vary with your genetic background and what your culture has evolved. And I don't know what it's like when you do the crossover of Chinese people eating Mediterranean or vice versa.
Who lives the longest at the moment, by the way? What of our races here on Earth and cultures live the longest?
Japanese do really well. Spaniards have got a higher life expectancy than we have, even though they smoke cigarettes, which is bizarre.
Yeah, and they drink like fish.
They do. They also have the siesta, which is not about having a sleep, but about having sex and then having a sleep. Oh, that makes a difference.
Is that what it is all these years?
Well, yeah.
So they're going home to lie down, but not to sleep.
Well, they love another person very much in a special way. Then they go to sleep. And they do this weird stuff with sleep where they eat late at night and they're not following the 12-hour let your tummy have a rest rule. I don't know why, but they must be doing something right if they live longer than we do, even though they smoke cigarettes, which is dangerous.
Actually, that reminds me. I was just talking to Dr. Karl, Dr. Brad here, who's also looking at the fine spread we've got here, the lovely laid-out food. How do you figure out what you're supposed to eat there? Because you're a diet and everyone's going to go, what's the doctor eating?
Usually 5 serves of vegetables every day. That's about 94% of the population doesn't achieve that. in Australia. So
it's kind of hard sometimes, unless you're eating soup.
Exactly. So always go for the vegetables first.
Now, what about the cheese over there? We've got some nice blue vein cheese there. Dr. Karl was like, it's God's way of telling you you're getting fat by eating that stuff,
Well, as we get older, our taste buds decline and their ability to function, and so we go for smellier and smellier cheeses to get the same effect. Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's that death of our taste buds in our mouth.
Well, look, I'll let you eat something because you've got a big afternoon of being sceptical.
Definitely.
Interestingly enough, Maynard here in the green room here, something that's completely untouched dietarily is the family assorted biscuits. So this is interesting. Bunch of skeptics. No one going near the family assorted biscuits around. Yeah, I know. Yes, exactly. Everyone's going for the fruit, the veggies. No one's eating that. That means there's probably a nice Vovo in here. That's nice. Nice Vovo. Hello. Look, I'm down the front here at the recordings about to start, and as you know, often the troublemakers are down the front. Who have we got here?
Amanda.
Amanda, now, what are you hoping to get out or from this session with the Skeptic Zone live recording?
Unravelling the mystery behind the podcast.
Oh.
See how it's all done. I've heard how it's all done. I want to see how it's all done.
I've got to tell you, it's on a budget. It's not even smoke and mirrors. It's just smoke. Okay, no, it'll be fine. Look, you'll enjoy it there. We've got everybody there, all your regulars there, and there's Richard looking a bit stressed because he's got to put the whole thing together later. He's got to do all this editing later.
He needs more coffee.
He does. You need more coffee, Richard? Yes, he's shaking a bit. Well, you enjoy the show.
Thank you, Maynard.
Look, and of course, I've gone to the front of the room, and of course, the back of the room is also where the troublemakers are. How come you're here today?
Because I love skeptics and science, and it seemed fun.
Oh, right, so you are maybe hoping to get something educational out of this.
Maybe.
I love that you think she's going to get something. That's great.
A bit of cheek as well.
Yeah, bit of cheek going on. Thank you. Okay, well, I've gone the front, the back room. That's right now. Thank you very much. Richard's still looking a bit nervous there, bud.
The Skeptic Zone, a miracle of technology. Sing along now. Sing along. A universe of reason, the Skeptic Zone.
Yay! Welcome to the Skeptic Zone. It's the podcast from Australia, made for science and reason. And here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Sojka.
Hello.
Go nuts.
Hey. Thank you, Maynard.
My pleasure.
Hello, Stefan. Yes, it's going to be Iran Segev, a grain of salt. So,
Grain of salt. Grain of salt. Grain of salt. Rock and roll.
it's fading out.
Hello, everyone. Well, this is a complete...
Hello, Heidi.
Hello, Heidi.
This is a bit of a change of pace from what...
All right, so without further ado, we're going to move on. Did I blow out the system there? I'm sorry.
We're back.
You're okay.
We're back.
Maybe that should be the theme. We have our next segment, which is Dr. Stefan Sojka. Dr. Stefan Sojka!
Hi, I'm Dr. Stefan Sojka, and I do apologise, but I am here today to expose you to the greatest conspiracy ever perpetrated.
That looks good enough to eat. Or does it? Here's the diet skeptic, Mandy-Lee Noble.
My name's Mandy Noble. I'm the diet skeptic, and I came here to talk to you about something I thought would be a bit interesting today.
That's great. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
Thank you!
Good. Look, a chat to you. Look, now we've got one of the listeners here. What was it like being in the audience for that?
Oh, amazing. It was great getting to see what you guys actually look like.
Now, did you get some good diet advice, did you?
Yeah, I did. I actually lost 50 kilograms, so I wanted to come up and say, I completely see what you mean. I didn't do any fat diets. I just did basic diet.
That was a white knuckle thing. You just had to do it hard, hey?
Yeah, exactly. So, yep, I knew exactly what it... Yeah. So,
thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for coming. So, Heidi, how do you feel after you've done the big live show here?
Yeah, it was really exciting, and it was great. The room was packed and people were even standing because there was no room.
Yeah, and they're very attentive. In fact, we couldn't get to everybody with the microphone. There were so many people.
I know. No, it was really nice to be in front of a crowd rather than just on my own in the office in front of a microphone.
Yeah, going hello, telling the dog to shut up, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the kids to be quiet.
Delving deep and so on.
Yeah.
Good one, Richard.
Here we have a listener all the way from Katoomba.
That's right.
Which I believe is you're the highest person of everyone who came along.
That's right.
Now, what was your favourite bit from today's show?
Oh, well, we just had excellent contributors all round, you know. Quality presentations.
Great.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you enjoyed that. And you even added to what Iran had to say there about bringing up girls.
Yes. It's I'm an aunt, and so I see them from one step further outside the immediate circle. And I'm a teacher too, so I have that kind of aspect that I view it from, and it's an interesting social evolution that's happening. That's very interesting to become involved in.
Even though I agree with everything that Iran said, I wouldn't say that in case I said something wrong and got it wrong in some small way and really stuffed it up.
It took guts, and I think he proved his quality in taking that rather.
Hey, Iran, go Iran.
Go Iran.
Thank you. Quick chat. Look, wow, you stirred up a hornet's nest with your diet advice there. You come into the Skeptic Zone, we've got a perfectly nice podcast, and you go pooping it over with your calorie intake talk.
Oh, sorry about that, Maynard. I just wanted to set the record straight on how I felt about weight loss diets, intentional weight loss diets.
And what sort of people have been coming up to you, challenging you?
Well, they haven't actually been challenging. They've been interested to know about the studies that health habits are far more important than weight in predicting health. So it's been really good to share some of that knowledge.
Okay, and my BMI is edging into the overweight as well. Even looking at me, that's weird.
I can't believe it. Looking at you, I just think you'd be in your prime. So
yeah. Oh well. Hey, look, could I write that down as a recommendation on something? Can I use that on Tinder?
my dietitian friend says I look fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
what a great show.
Let's
go celebrate by having a low coralic drink with lots of alcohol in it or something like that. That's good. Yeah, that's right. Look, I'm just here with the Dr. Stefan. Now, after that show, what did you think of it?
It was absolutely fabulous. And the crowd response, the warmth of the crowd, they were beautiful people. It was a beautiful day.
Yeah. Look, there are people that have come from Melbourne, people that have come from Perth, people that have come from Katoomba.
People from England, even.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
There was a non-dual citizen from England.
Yeah. I think it was Nigel Farage, wasn't it? I heard him yelling, "Who are you?" or something like that.
Oh, yeah. He's yelling out some pretty far-right extremist views, but that's what the Skeptic Zone's all about. Airing opinions.
Look, before the show started, I recommended some highly non-skeptical podcasts to people out there because I find that a lot of the skeptics don't expose themselves to serious woo. That they do the consumer woo. But like if you were to listen to Red Ice Radio, for example, that is it's
a heavy duty.
It's a heavy duty supremacist show from Sweden, but they are morally correct within their universe. So you get to understand what they're about, even though you will not agree with it.
It's interesting because that particular show, I discovered that show, the person who runs it, Heinrich, somebody. So a long time ago, I found him somewhere on YouTube, or he liked a video that I did or something, and there was some element of what he was on about that was actually I resonated with, and I thought he's onto something there. But the more I listen, the wackier it got.
Well, they would say that they're being skeptical to or they're trying to give an even-handed opinion to the subject of immigration to Sweden, for example, that sort of thing. And you go, oh, okay, someone's being even-handed, looking at both sides, and And yeah.
Well, I guess it's difficult.
Also, Sweden's got the issue where they've got the highest amount of immigrants per capita in all of Europe. I think the only other country that's high might be Norway.
I saw some animated infographic the other day that showed all the migration over the last so many years, and it was just this literally a swarm that was just pouring into Germany and Sweden, and I was thinking, I'm not sure if everyone's ready for that because it's happening so quickly.
Well, also, I'm not quite like if you're from the Middle East, the climate of Sweden and the culture of Sweden, suddenly you've moved to a socialist state that's up near the Arctic Circle.
It's pretty radical.
Yeah.
So
it's a big ask.
Yeah. So whoever's agreed to do that has challenged society to some pretty heavy engineering. You could understand how people who are there going, oh my God, what's happening? I thought once. Myself, if I was suddenly walking around my town where I live and all of a sudden every single person that I encountered was covered in a great big black sheath, would I still feel comfortable? And so it's all about proportion, because a few you'd go, oh, that's right, minority, whatever. But if I was the only one who wasn't like that, I'd start to feel quite out of place. So
it's also interested me in the sociology of Sweden, because they say things and I go look it up, and they're taking the extreme end of what happened too. So so you've also got to learn your sources, but it's a great skeptical exercise.
It is as well, and it brings out human nature a little bit as well, because I think all of us as humans, biologically and historically, we are sort of we like people who we can relate to. I think, and that's not to say we hate people we can't relate to. It's just that we prefer. If I have a chat with you about 80s pop music, we'd resonate a lot.
Oh, look, yeah, I mean, like we're both down with the sound of Fred Fairbass, of course, the lead singer of Right Said Fred.
Oh yeah, an absolutely fabulous.
That baritone voice is fantastic.
And Soft Cell, what a great act they were.
Mark Arman and Dave Ball.
Oh,
Dave Ball? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I didn't follow them that closely. But brilliant music.
Look, I'm just going to go and follow the career of Dave Ball a bit closer.
I think we should. Thank you, Maynard. That was an interesting discussion.
Hey, Richard.
Oh, hi, Trish. Hi. Would you like a coffee?
Yeah, thanks. What are you working on?
I'm trying to come up with a new promo to play on the Skeptic Zone.
Who's it for?
The Good Thinking Society in the UK. You know, Michael Marshall, Simon Singh, Laura Thomas and that crowd.
Oh, yeah, I know them. Oh. They've been doing some great work investigating veterinary homeopathy.
Veterinary homeopathy? What, you sugar pills for cows?
I know, right? And also they're looking at some of the dodgy medical advice given by UK chiropractors.
Really? Okay, look, I'll mention all that in the promo. Now, their website is goodthinkingsociety.org.
And they've recently been reporting on the resurgence of faith healer Peter Popov.
Peter Popov. Great. Okay, look, thanks for that. It gives me something good to think about.
Well, here we are at a very important dinner. Sure, some things go past without anyone eating, but there's no way you can possibly go without eating when it's Richard Saunders' birthday. Happy birthday, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, we've just got a few intimate people here. We've got, Tim over there, we've got another Tim over there. I get them confused. Hi, Tim, how are you?
Hey, I'm the other Tim. I'm very well, Maynard. How are you?
We're enjoying some fish and chips at the club at the end of the street. Now, what's the best present you've got for your birthday, Richard?
All of them, Maynard, all of them. But Lara gave me some wonderful Walking Dead little, what do they call these?
Little figures.
Yeah. Catherine gave me a space pen.
Yes, now I thought you would have had one of them. That's one of those ones that they advertise as being able to write upside down and underwater.
I have to go to space to use it. Yeah, but Tim Ferguson gave me an original artwork.
Worth several $100s.
Yes, this is actually some of Tim's outsider art, Tim. And how would you describe the image that you drew and the ennui that you projected for Richard?
It's a man with a dream looking forward to many, many years of joy.
Okay, I thought it was Paul McDermott.
That description does not at all describe Paul McDermott.
But you've been on the ABC today talking about some dirty stuff, Richard.
Yeah, it was a bit strange. I was very short notice called into the ABC here in Sydney to do a hookup to Darwin, and the topic was basically UFOs, Min Light, and the sky boob.
I've looked at the sky boob photo, and I think it looks like a sky cupcake with a little cherry on top. But, you know, that's just my mind. My mind goes to confectionery when it shouldn't, really. But we've got someone here who's been going through the comments on the alleged sky boob. And what have you found, Laura?
Oh no, I was just reading the actual article itself. This isn't even I haven't even got to the comments.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is the actual journalist that's written this. Oh, great.
First line of the article: Darwin resident Dean Stocks reckons this UFO is the weirdest thing he's seen sober.
And look, that's saying a lot up that end as well, because they've got Darwin Stubbies up there. They're fantastic. Yeah, old Darwin Stubbies, they're like a 2-litre bottle of beer.
Okay, we don't have things like that in England. Stop confusing me, mate.
Oh, look, you can have irresponsible drinking without that kind of thing in England. You can do it just in small cans.
Yeah, we just get massive bottles of cheap cider.
Yeah. So what did you have to say about it, Richard?
Well, I discovered that this, whatever it is, and it does look like a cupcake or something pink in the sky. What's this?
Comments have been closed for this story, damn it.
Yeah, the word boob came up too often.
Probably did. No, I was talking about that, and I was discovered that it's looked identical in different photographs, which is a bit suspicious. But I was talking about UFOs and ghosts and the Min lights and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay, well, look, now, one of the things that I know you avoided, because I sent it to you because the evidence was incontrovertible, Richard, is that the Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination is a complete forgery. I sent you information that proved that, and you've denied it. You've denied it, Richard. You and the shadowy elite.
We did. I was on another radio show, a different one here in Sydney this morning, and they wanted to know about JFK, Elvis, and Princess Diana.
Wow, that's 3 very disparate theories there.
Well, they're all tied in with conspiracy theories, you know. Who killed JFK? Who killed Diana? And is Elvis still alive?
Right, so did they spring this on you? What did they come up with?
No, I knew that was going to be the topic, so I talked about the coroner's report for Elvis. I talked about the fact that Princess Di wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and I said that Lee Harvey Oswald shot President Kennedy, and they said, yeah, okay.
No wonder we're here at the RSL. You're no fun at parties, Richard, I tell you. Did Tim Mendham, you had something to say on that?
Yeah, I've got a theory, which I've just developed, actually.
Oh, good on you.
It occurred to me that Elvis, Princess Diana and JFK all died sitting down.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I find that significant, don't you?
Yeah. Right, so it's big chair, getting to people again. Big chair. Yeah.
Well, in Elvis' case, big toilet. But
Oh, well, yeah. That's going true there. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, Richard, so what do you want to say to people on this auspicious day of your birthday? What he's trying to say is buy me a present. There you go.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Here is the loose ends part of the show where we bring you extra information and bits of news, and a bit of sad news, I must say, we're going to bring you now. A long-time and much revered skeptic here in Australia, Professor Colin Groves, died recently, in fact, on the 30th of November. He was a professor of biological anthropology at the Australian National University, and one of the world's leading anthropologists, who identified more than 50 species of animals during his career. He was an active member of Australian Skeptics and had many published skeptical papers and letters as recently as this year. He also conducted regular debates with creationists. But he was an inspiration for many people. I found out this sad news via our friend Professor Paul Willis, in fact, who also knew Colin Groves. So to the family, friends and family, and that's all of us, I guess, of Colin Groves, the sympathies from the Skeptic Zone. I only saw Colin maybe 2-3 years ago in Canberra, so sad to think he's gone. And thank you to those people, as ever, who contribute to the Skeptic Zone to keep the show going. I picked up some new Patreon patrons just recently. Thank you very much. Your origami DVD is on the way. For those people who do decide to support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon, if you support over a certain limit, I send you an origami DVD. Not a DVD made out of origami, a DVD teaching you how to make origami, which I produced about 10 years ago with my friend Gary Clark. And if you decide to chip in a bit more, you also get a signed card from myself and James Randi. Ooh, that's pretty good. I might join in myself. More information at skepticzone.tv. And it always helps the show if you leave a review on iTunes, for example. Although I noticed many years ago, looking through some of the reviews, which are very kind. Thank you very much for those people who leave nice reviews. There are a couple of suspicious reviews, very short, with funny names. The person posting them, it looks like they're sneaking around as a sock puppet. Yes, a sock puppet, a sock puppet, leaving short, silly reviews. So, yes, thanks. Yeah, that helps. Thank you very much. But for the rest of you leaving real reviews, much appreciated. And for those people who are asking, Henrietta is behind me on another chair having a sleep, and Maud is outside the door. Why they do that, I don't know. And this has been an interesting session of recording this segment of the show, because I don't know if it's the weather conditions or the wind conditions. Well, it's weather conditions, I suppose. Or it's just the turn of this suburb. But I've had to stop at least every 3 minutes for heavy aircraft movement of airliners, A380s, things going to different parts of the world or different capital cities from Australia. It's been just one of those days. Remarkable air traffic right over my house. The things you don't hear. In fact, here comes another one. Oh, normally I stop while planes going overhead, but since there's one every 2 minutes now, I'll press on before I go. Another reminder of the meeting, the meetup, the Mayanrd Skeptics from our friends down at the Mayanrd Skeptics in Victoria. Next Tuesday, the 5th of December, which is only in a couple of days, Dr. Ken Harvey is speaking to the Mayanrd Skeptics on the important topic, an update on advertising and complementary medicine regulatory reform. And this should be a very interesting talk indeed. Links on the show notes. It will be at the Mayanrd Skeptics meeting, which is 7:30 p.m. on the 5th of December at the Mordialloc Sporting Club, Main Street, Mordialloc. And the note says, join us for dinner beforehand at Jack's Restaurant at 6:15 p.m. I've had the pleasure of going down to the Mordialloc Skeptics a number of times, and it's always a great evening. So you people in Melbourne and around the area, why not head for that? But for this week, with, I think it's probably a UFO now hovering over the house in formation with 20 others, this is Richard Saunders signing off from the Flight Path, Sydney, New South Wales. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. You can be part of the show by downloading the Voice Byte app at voicebyte.com and using the hashtag Skeptic Zone. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation. What are you doing? Leave my basket alone. Come here. What are you doing? What's that? How did you do that? All right. Now, you going to be quiet, you two? I've got a podcast to do, you know. You stay on the chair and you stay on the floor. Is that all right? Have we got a deal? Now, don't walk over there. You can lie there as long as you're quiet. Why am I talking to cats? Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 476 for the 3rd of December, 2017. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia, waiting for the flooding